Hi, everyone. I'm Kevin KAL Kelleher. I'm the editorial cartoonist for The Economist magazine. And here is my studio. So, what we want to do today is talk about what it takes to be a cartoonist, peek behind the curtain on how we do it every week. Going to take your questions, and we're going to have some fun. I'm going to teach you how to draw a cartoon. So, get your pens ready, and I look forward to chatting.
Hello, and welcome to a very special subscriber-only webinar with The Economist. My name is Sacha Nauta. I am the executive editor of the paper, and I'm delighted to introduce you to Kevin Kelleher, better known, of course, as KAL, our editorial cartoonist. Welcome, KAL. Lovely to have you here. Thanks for joining. I don't know, good morning, good evening. It's probably a bit confusing for you on a Thursday. What time did the workday end for you this morning?
Yes, so as everyone may know, Wednesday is our press day, and I'm always working to very tight deadlines. So I finished about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning here in Baltimore, and which was about 9 a.m. UK time. And now, of course, the cartoon will be going live any minute, and that's the kind of tight deadlines that we work with.
Gosh, and you know, talking about this week's cartoon, I've been told that you're willing to give us a quick sneak peek of what indeed made it into the paper. Can you tell us a bit about when did you start thinking about it, and where did the idea come from? Maybe we can bring it up actually.
Right. Yeah. So actually, the cartoons. In fact, you're constantly thinking about them all days of the week and practically half the night, because you're ingesting the news constantly, and every time you hear a story, you're looking for personal commentary. What do you feel? What do you think about the story as it's unfolding? And then every one of those thoughts can be turned into a cartoon. And this week was a really interesting one, Sasha, because as you know, we at the magazine cover lots of subjects, but some weeks we really put a lot of attention into a single subject. And now with so much going on in Ukraine and Russia, I suspected that this was going to be the big story of the week. However, I've done many cartoons on that recently, and I knew the magazine was going to have so many articles about it that I decided to give it a rest this week and instead turn my mind elsewhere. And as I turn my mind elsewhere, there's so much material to go on. But something I read recently about the nature of inflation and the troubles that this is going to cause us. And it's also a subject dear to the heart of The Economist and its readers. So I decided to go in this direction. And so everyone could see the cartoon here. I have also included a little bunch of sketches to show you how I came from that original idea and ended up with this cartoon. Yeah, so when I first start doing my sketches, as you're going to see here, I just work on like photocopy paper, just like original sketches. And this thing is about 3 inches wide by an inch and a half tall, and I do little doodles, scribbles, if you like. And I was kind of planning this thing, and then the next cartoon you see is that once I've got this little scribble, I will then scan it and then start playing with the shapes in there. And I'm putting the border around it because the Economist cartoon has a specific size and shape that I've got to draw to. And then after I get this cartoon, I enlarge it to about 12 inches wide and 8 inches tall and start doing a pencil sketch, as you can see here. Now, this is the sketch that I will send to London, in this case to Zanny, and say, hey, what do you think of this cartoon? And they said they really liked it. I'm going to draw your attention, however, to the southeast corner of it. You could see that it says inflation there, and that the tube moves up into the inflated air mattress. When Zanny saw this cartoon, she said, this is great. We love this. But, technically, inflation is, in fact, the mattress itself. And it's bad fiscal monetary policies that are filling it up. So she said, technically, we should make the mattress inflation, which for the Economist readers and subscribers, these distinctions are really important. So I found a way that we could do this. So you can see the next cartoon, this next image, is that we took this and then I did it in black and white using my 100-year-old pen nibs to crosshatch to create the image you see here. And then The next one, which is something I don't often do for the Economist, I added a gray tint in order to get the idea of an evening. I like this too, Sasha, because for the design element of it, notice that you see the giant words on the upper left-hand corner. You read that, of course, the light behind the cat gets there. Then you see the trail of the light coming through the door against the bed, and your eyes roll up to the single white dot of the eyeball, and then it drops down and sees the payoff, inflation. So that comes in at the end, and I was using composition and color in order to help tell the story.
So your eyes go on a journey to I mean, you've called your cartoons, or editorial cartoons, visual columns, if I'm not
Yes.
mistaken. Is that right?
Well, that's a good way to describe it, I think, Sasha, because Economist has so many great columnists, right? We've got Lexington and we've got Bajan, so many great columns. And the cartoon kind of stands alone in its own funny way to tell a story and tell a cartoon. So my job is not necessarily to make people laugh. The cartoons are good at doing that, but to make people think using humor, using satire, but also using pictures to create a story. And perhaps with all the other great columns in The Economist, the cartoon can do it just a little bit differently and make it more memorable for free people.
And just if we could bring the cartoon up one last time. I mean, I have to say, Cal, I'm not surprised you couldn't or wouldn't or decided not to do Russia, because you're right. You've done Russia, Ukraine for several weeks, and it's all over this week's paper. But inflation, I've got to say, it doesn't. If I think of inflation, I don't instantly have images in my mind. It seems like a difficult subject. Is it for you as well, or did this idea just sort of just appear in your head instantly?
Well, it's very rare that a cartoon just comes to you. They can all be kind of, in fact, if something comes straight to you, you be very wary, because chances are you'll look at it 8 hours later and say that wasn't very good. But doing things, complicated subjects like economic issues, are trickier to do when you're doing a cartoon, because cartoons goes in shorthand. And when something's complicated, to distill it down to that really accessible few lines gets tricky. But so that's one of the challenges that I have. But it's also, it's a delicious challenge. I really relish the opportunity to create, to use the cartoon medium for the purpose of taking on complex issues. So inflation, I mean, I've done lots of business related things in the past, but inflation is not necessarily that going to be that easy to do. So when I guess it all started when I maybe said to myself that, after hearing some stories, well, yeah, bad inflation is keeping the Fed up at night. So that's kind of where it started. And I went, hold on a second, let me see if I can come up with something in here. And just you start grappling with images.
And at what point did you add the cat?
Oh, the cat was fun in the sketch, because I wanted to. It was, first of all, it just was kind of going to be kind of fun. It's also it draws the eye away from the payoff, and that's the reason why I put it there.
Yeah, got it. Okay, fantastic. Well, that's in this week's issue. We're now going to do something a little bit experimental, which is we, or rather mostly Cal, let's be honest, are going to have a go at drawing a live cartoon based on whatever is on our minds, right, Cal? And we haven't liaised here, so we might have very different things on our minds. But before we get going, I might tell you what's on my mind in a sec. But as you're scanning the news, Cal, how much, as you're considering stories, how much of that is about this will work visually and this won't, versus this is the most interesting story? Like, how do you rule things out or bring them in?
Well, I'm always going for the story. The story drives everything. The opinion, the idea, the point drives all your decisions. And but also when you're even contemplating that, when you're doing something for The Economist, we are a weekly publication, means that whatever you draw or write, the magazine has to be sustainable for 4, 5, 7 days. Can't be caught out by events, and so sometimes that limits your pool of subject matter, because the stories can be moving so fast. Or if you decide to tackle it, you have to do it at an angle that you feel may not be pulled out. So that means I have some cartoons that I'll do that are tight on the news. The news is breaking, you're staying on it. But then there's other cartoons that are more generic in scope. So when it comes to this week, for example, Sasha, I'll be interested to hear your subject ideas. I had two subjects that were gathering my attention, and I was even thinking of perhaps doing something on them for the magazine this week. One of them is the convoy of truckers in Canada, and then of
Yes.
course there are copycats around the world, and that issue that was going to be kind of interesting, and that's a breaking story, but it's also kind of settled down a little bit. Good point, good place for commentary. And the other one is what I thought was an interesting one because I suspected we wouldn't have anything in the magazine this week about it. And then if a cartoon does something, it just touches, it's a good thing for the magazine. It touches a little subject we don't. And that is, I believe there was a shareholder meeting, there was a major meeting in Facebook, now Meta, where Zuckerberg was now basically the official rollout. We knew that we had heard that they were changing names. That news broke a few months ago, but now this is the official rollout. And I thought, we got to visit, not only just visit it, but we have to keep on this notion of Facebook's responsibility when it comes to disinformation and, hate groups, all the elements dealing with it. And even though you've got all this fancy eye candy at Meta, we don't want to take our eyes off the other thing. So those are my two subjects.
No, they're great. They're great subjects. Actually, I had the truckers in Canada in mind as well. Although I was thinking more of the Trudeau angle, but maybe that's too newsy in a way because we don't know where that is going next. How Justin Trudeau is placing himself. So to your point of some stability in where the story goes, yours is probably better. And interesting on Meta, actually, I hadn't thought about that. It's a very fair point. The other one I was thinking about, the other two I was thinking about. One is the Winter Olympics in Beijing starting to come to an end, and you're seeing. I noticed, maybe this is too niche, but I noticed one or two sports people who've come back now starting to say some critical things about China, and there's this interesting contrast, right? About on the one hand, there's this really, the Olympics with all its stars and fireworks, but at the same time, there's an awful lot of controversy about China, which they obviously couldn't air when they were out there. But maybe you need another week for that to stabilize. The other obvious one, even though you've been drawing it for many weeks, is still Russia and the failing diplomacy. And the thing that stuck with me was Bolsonaro, Jair Bolsonaro, Brazil's leader, has apparently met with Putin. But unlike all the other leaders who've seen him over the last weeks, you've had Macron, you've had several others who sat at these really long, Olaf Scholz, long tables. Bolsonaro was given a very little table so that they could sit closer to each other, which I just thought apparently it had something to do with the COVID test, but it also, I think, tells you everything about this ridiculous game of Putin's in how he how the diplomacy is failing, in my opinion. But anyway, that's Ukraine, which is moving incredibly fast and therefore probably quite a difficult one for you to start sketching about. Which one do you want to pick? Pick
Yeah.
something.
Well, it's funny you said the Bolsonaro thing. The thing that immediately came to mind is that he's at the children's table, right? This is tiny, he's at a little small table nearby. But the reason why I would avoid that one is just as you say, the story's changing. And then it will seem in 2 days' time that this Bolsonaro visit is a really small potatoes, in comparison to whatever's breaking. So as tempting as that would be to put him at a children's table or in a high chair, I think I would pass on that one. I do like the Olympic one in that I've done lots of cartoons about Olympics, and of course China's hosted the Summer Games, and there was a lot of cartoons. I think I did some really good cartoons I'm very proud of about the kind of polishing of the Chinese reputation by having these Olympics, but it didn't quite between the pollution and things going on outside, we couldn't forget what's really going on. And today, of course, with the Uyghurs and with Hong Kong, it's really apparent that we have to keep focus on those things. The Olympics will come and go, but these other things are much more important. So we can definitely do something there. I would feel confident doing something there. The truckers to me might be interesting only because number one, it's a subject that how often we get to do Canada, right, in one of our cartoons. Um, and then also, it's a complex subject, but the challenge of trying to distill it, right?
Yeah.
I'm going to vote for that one. I'm going to
Let's
vote
go.
for that
No,
one.
I was about to vote for Canada as well. So at what
Okay.
stage? So okay, so we've established Canada is a good candidate. What happens next? Do you then just start sketching? Do you want to start sketching?
I
The
definitely
thought?
going to start sketching. Yeah, so I definitely start sketching. And I just want to make sure that you can see I've turned
Yeah.
to
Can
my
we?
drawing table over here
Exactly.
so
There
that
we
we
go.
can see here, right? So yeah,
Perfect.
I'm going to start sketching here, and often I'm thinking and drawing at the same time. I also have to know that I'm always going to be operating in this size space because this is the size of our cartoon in The Economist, and I'm always thinking about composition and various elements to it. But the one point that I think I want to pursue with this, Sacha, is you talked about the Justin Trudeau element. That bit's moving. Here's the stable piece of this story that I'd like to approach is that I'm not a big fan of these kind of protests. Obviously, anti-vax, anti-mask things. I don't have as much tolerance for those. But using trucks to disrupt an economy and to 90% of the truckers are already vaccinated, but now their lives are getting complicated by these guys. So I wanted to do something about that. That was kind of maybe showing a little unflattering view of these kind of protests. So I was thinking trucks. Trucks the trucks have a very distinctive shape, right? The front of the truck is like this, and the trail end of the truck is like this. You normally have those wheels there, and one or two back here. So I thought, how am I going to play with that shape to make something come from it? I thought, what might be interesting? How about if I had a cab on the front and on the back? Maybe there's some joke about, they're staying in the middle of a road and blocking everybody. Wasn't sure about that. Um, but I have this idea. I got this idea, which I think will work. I think this will work, Sacha. Is that imagine the trucks are lined up one after another, okay, like they are being presently. So they're like little boxes. Like here's one, here's the second one, like this, and they got the wheels underneath. Oh, here's a third one, by the way. Oh yeah, and we've got another one here. But what they're beginning to look like is they're beginning to look like a snake. And the front one, here's the front one, on the front sort of looking at you with this type, kind of looks like a snake, right? So that kind of got me going. So, all right,
Oh,
there's got
nice.
to be
Yeah.
a way
Yeah.
that we can get a snaky trail of trucks here. So going back to my composition here, okay, I'm thinking that we have a character that is like Canada here, okay, and we have a snake coming up and wrapping itself around the body of Canada, and then kind of looking at the character like this. Okay, so this is again the general composition that we're kind of doing something like this. That would work nicely in the shape, I think, and also you have this kind of feel, and particularly if I can make this like our little cat, if we can make this snaky truck really interesting, it would be kind of fun, and it would be an image that people wouldn't forget, right? So
Absolutely.
here I am. I'm starting up here. We got another truck bit bango behind that one. It's got its wheels underneath, and again, you can see how sketchy, sketchy. No, that's maybe the wrong word. The sketch like my early concept drawings are. It's just to get a kind of a general shape, get everything kind of put it together. And I do this, the pacing and time of doing a cartoon, such as all day thing. It takes me 8 hours easily to knock one of these out and get it all inked up. But right
Wait,
now, for the
eight
purposes
hours
of
from what to what, Cal? 8 hours
from
from
this
start.
tiny little sketch to a finished magic art piece of artwork is going to take
Gosh.
us about 8. But we're not going to spend 8 hours doing that
No, no,
today.
no. Well, we could.
Well,
I'm sure people would love to watch this for 8 hours. But it's kind of fascinating to see it go and fill. And
hmm.
do you use erasers, or do you just keep going over, like just take a new sheet of paper and keep sketching over things?
Um, a little bit of both, to be honest, because erasers are friends of
Mm.
cartoonists, believe me. So yes, using phrase, but at this early stage, while I'm mapping stuff out, and I'm not trying to necessarily get the ultra details, I'm just trying to build rather than take away. Erasing
Yeah.
takes away, drawing builds, and I will come into this in a minute. Actually, you're going to see that in just a second. The next thing I'm just the next contemplation thing is
Mm.
how do we represent Canada here? Okay, who
Yes,
is
I was
this
about to
character?
ask.
What
Yeah. What do we
what
think of
gender?
Canada?
What do they look like? I didn't want them to be Trudeau, right? Because then that makes it too political, it's too specific to him or to his politics. And I wanted it to be a general character. Now, the first thing, of course, you would have to have a kind of an American style baseball cap with probably with the maple leaf on it, maybe the flag of Canada on it here like this, and I would probably do a kind of a lumberjacky kind of character.
Oh
I don't know if
yes, good
that's
one.
terribly
Outdoorsy.
unfair.
Sorry,
Is that
Canadians.
unfair?
Sorry, Canadians. If you have
I,
better suggestions, let us know. But I agree. I'm kind of thinking lumberjack or sort of ice hockey, outdoorsy, hunting.
mm.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Well,
What
here's a
other?
better idea. Here's a better idea. Okay, is that the many of my Canadian cartoonist colleagues, they will use a beaver as the kind of the
Oh
symbol
yes, there you go. Yep.
of Canada. So let's get a beaver. We have to get the teeth in first, okay, because that kind of anchors the whole thing. And then, but it'll still have to have the baseball cap on it, so people can make that connection to Canada, right? So we have the beaver, and then the bee. So we have a beaver being. This is terribly unrealistic. A beaver being strangled by a snake full of
What?
trucks. Come on now. Come on now.
Wow,
Anyway, so here we are. So this is, I think, I look at this and you go,
that's a
hey,
nice.
there's some potential here. Do you think we got some potential here,
I
Sasha?
think we've got some. I think we've got some potential. Just tell me. I'm curious. With the beaver with the baseball cap, would you put a Canadian what's it called, maple leaf on the front of the like? How do you make sure people who don't get the beaver reference don't completely lose out?
Gotcha. Exactly right. All right. So what I would do is that, well, first of all, everyone can see here, I just turned on a light underneath my drawing. That's called a light box. And I put another piece of paper on here for the prospects of trying to embellish this without erasing everything all the time. So what I would do is, okay, so I'm going to do a little bit better version here of the baseball cap, so it looks understandable to people. And yes, I would likely put the flag of Canada here.
Mm,
Um, because we're dealing in black and white in the cartoon, um, it's not as distinctive because the red color here on the
mm,
flag would just look like a bar. So I would either make the flag here with the maple leaf in it, and might even have to put Canada underneath it if after drawing it for a little while, it looks like it wasn't going to be quite recognizable. Uh, but the trying to find something that looks, you know, people can notice it if they want to look at it, look for it, but not too large where it's going to shout out at people. So
yeah,
trying to
yeah,
get
yeah.
that nice balance, you know what I'm saying? Sorry, so here's the beaver. Okay, and I'm not going to put him in a shirt. I think it's enough that he's got a hat on, so it's just going to be a beaver, right? And
That's
I'm going to have to stick
fantastic.
his tail, right? He's got a big tail out here, so his tail's going to have to be underneath here. Although beavers tend to have short legs, so maybe I'm thinking I should give him a pair of trousers. Maybe I should put a shirt on him. I don't know. Okay, well, let's just put the legs in here and let's kind of see what's going on. All right, so now I'm just gonna, now that I have the kind of the trucks idea, I perhaps could just get the proportions a little bit better. I'm not gonna go to town. All right, we don't have 8 hours here, but this is an idea to make them really look more and more like they're going around him and kind of strangulating him at the same time. Now, meanwhile, I'm doing this, Sasha, I am not just looking at the drawings. I am thinking about captions and word balloons. What's
Mm,
who's going to be saying what? Maybe there's a way. This is kind of an interesting image. It may be enough to have the image if I was thinking that on this convoy here on the trucks, where trucks tend to have words that they might
oh,
have
nice.
the
Yes.
words,
Yeah.
protest convoy, so people understand
Yeah.
that what this is about, right? I didn't want to call it freedom convoy because to me, where I'm trying to point is that that is a little bit of a misnomer because they're actually restricting people's freedom by calling themselves freedom, and I also think that they're over egging the pudding a little bit in approach to this thing. So, anyways, here, so we have freedom, protest convoy here, and it's going up like this, like a giant snake. But I have an idea, and you're gonna have to tell me how you think this works, of of what we might do as a caption here. But let me just finish. This is going to be the key. This little guy up here, he's got to be. This is going to have to be a really good truck, and he's going to have to look like it's anthropomorphic. It's going to have to be a truck that also looks like a creature. Maybe I could make his tires look like fangs. I don't know on the character. Like this, he's banging around. The
Oh,
truck
I
comes
see
here,
what you're getting
like
at.
this, so we can see we can
Oh,
get
that could
there.
work.
Got some balloons here. So I'm trying to think what this guy and what this guy could be saying. Or maybe they don't say anything. And this is often the big dance that I go through, and it takes a little while. Sometimes the characters shout out at you and tell you exactly what they want to say. And so there you can see a little bit of how the drawing will look, okay, just as in the next round of sketches. So I will do maybe 3 or 4 or 5 rounds of sketches, building, changing, manipulating in order to make these things work better. So I think what I'll do is if I can come up, if you and I can come up with a quick caption, we'll then say that this is the cartoon for the week. But I will just show you one last step that you may find interesting. But here, let's see if we can get a caption here. So one idea I had was maybe something where he's saying, the Canadian chap is saying, why, strangle me, right? Or maybe he doesn't say it. Why strangle me? Question mark. And he says, because we embrace freedom.
Yeah, that's not a bad one. That's not
What
a
do you
bad
think?
one.
We embrace
Why
freedom.
strangle me? There's sorry, I'm just seeing a suggestion come in from someone who
Yes.
says Canada death by niceness because the police aren't doing anything except for
Very
being
nice.
nice.
Very nice. Very
But yeah,
nice.
why? Hang on. So what have you got? I'm struggling to read a little bit.
This one says,
Why strangle me? Yeah,
why strangle me? Because we embrace freedom.
yeah. That's not.
Yeah,
That's not
that's
a
not
bad one,
bad.
actually. That's not bad for
Or
first.
if we got rid of this, he could. Yes, sorry.
No, go on. You could just go with the. You could just go with the
Uh,
couple saying something.
yeah, he's just saying we embrace freedom.
Actually, that's
We don't
quite
even need
nice
the
because of the embrace. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I think that's almost neater. And then it's clear enough. You don't need the question anymore, do you?
Right. So one last step. So this is great. So once we get here, I'm feeling good about this, and I'm thinking the next 6 hours are going to go down really well. I'm not going to have any problems. But here's the fun bit. I wanted just to show everybody this really quickly, just to give a kind of a 10-second demonstration. Now I'm using, this is good paper. This is much better paper, and I'm going to show you how just a little example of inking my cartoon, because I use these old 100-year-old pen nibs here,
Oh, lovely.
right here like this. And then you can just see that I will spend hours and hours just doing this whole thing, with adding a little personality with the actual pen lines. And this gives personality to the artwork. Because if I did all of the lines just with a felt tip marker or a biro, the line would lack any emotion or feeling. But this one, the harder I press, the thicker the line or thin line underneath. And this is what we do. So I spend hours, toiling with my pen and the ink in order to make the cartoon as palatable and exciting for our readers.
Do you on that? That's fantastic, Cal. On that note, I remember you saying before that you were a method cartoonist, like you really get into your character. So I wonder in those 8 hours, are you that beaver? Or are you? How do you? Or do you just listen to music, or like how do you spend those hours? Are you in a trance?
Yeah, no, music is great, personally, but I also use the time to work by listening to podcasts, listening to Economist Radio, for example. Economist has a lot of great podcasts that I listen to on various different subjects. So I'm constantly trying to ingest information that are going to help inform future cartoons.
Yeah, got it. Okay, that was fantastic. Well, we've got so many questions that I'm going to turn to our audience, and actually I'm going to start with a few of their suggestions, which was Joel suggests, what about we're truculent? which is a
Oh,
wordplay on trucks.
mm,
Let's see. Jay says, how about if the truck snake opens the hood as if it's biting the beaver in the neck? Um, some
nice.
Dan has suggested that we need a bowl of poutine just out of reach of the beaver, which I quite like. But now
Yeah.
to some questions. Quite a few people are asking about techniques and tools, and maybe that's a nice one to pick up
Mm,
on, just as you were showing us your 100-year-old ink. Is it really a 100-year-old
mm.
ink? Did,
The not the ink, the nibs.
the
The
nibs, that makes
nibs,
slightly more
the
sense.
nibs. Yeah, in
Okay.
fact, they're made probably in the middle of the 1800s. This particular
Oh,
nib
wow.
that I bought at a pen shop in London that no longer exists, but I ended up. I like these nibs so much. I bought what may be the last hundred
You
of
brought them
them on
up.
the planet. Yeah.
You've okay. So I think there's a few artists or budding artists in here.
Mm.
Piers asks if you could just talk a bit more about the techniques and tools you use, and a few other people have also asked about digital, where, if anywhere, that comes in. You know, the tools that are available to you, I guess, on your iPad. Does that come into this at all, or are you very much an analog drawer?
Oh, well, I'm actually a good bit of both. I like to take the best of both worlds because I've spent, 4 decades trying to perfect my particular style of cartooning using analog means, as you saw. And analog means have certain personality that are unique, but the computer can do extraordinary things. And so every one of my cartoons you see, I will scan it at a certain point in black and white. I will then import it into my computer and then start to play with it. I will sometimes enhance the artwork or enlarge or reduce balloons, change the composition a little bit. It really helps in the early planning stages because I talked to you before about composition being important. Well, you get the chance to experiment with composition. You say, well, how would it be if that beaver was a little bit further to the left and its eyeballs are a little bit smaller? Instead of erasing and drawing and erasing and drawing, you throw it in your computer and then allow that to make those experiments quickly. Then I will then print out that and then use that as my formation for the pencil sketches and then the final ink drawing. Now, also, increasingly, you'll see so much work is cartoons are being created originally on the computer. So many of the graphics in The Economist are computer-driven graphics, and they're beautiful and they're really clever. And the artists who are doing this are just really impressive. So I'm doing more and more of color adding to my cartoons, but presently we really like to keep the cartoon in black and white. And I suspect it's partly because it has an old school flair to it,
Hmm.
Sasha, and maybe that it has a greater relationship to the words. But I'm happy to stick with it. I mean, it's taken me all this time. I think I'm getting the hang of it now.
Is there? I mean, more and more of. I mean, you've been with the paper for what, 40, over 40 years? Is that right?
44 years in April.
There you go. Is the fact that more and more people are reading us on apps and iPads rather than on paper, does that at all influence how or what you draw, or is actually the experience exactly the same from a viewer perspective? I mean,
From the viewer perspective, well, first, the cartoons are enormously popular on social media. They're almost made for social media because they're quick digestible chunks. People can give it a shot. It only takes 6 seconds to read. I mean, it's the perfect thing. And then, if depending on their shape, depending on the different social media platform, if they're the right size, you can see them clearly in the allocated window. So they really make great things there. So the amount of readers that I have and people responding to cartoons is enormous, and it's really exciting. Except for the trolls, which is not so exciting. But
mm,
the uh, the creation of the cartoons, when you're talking about doing stuff in social media, you can also do animated GIFs, or you can do a photo montage. I think that there's going to be more opportunities to use satire in different ways.
yes,
The drawings that I do in black and white, the cross hatching, was built for a print world. It was
yeah,
made for printing presses to capture imagery and make them look better because the printing was so bad. Uh, but because I've feel that it still gives me some personality. I think there's always a danger of feeling that you're really old school and people won't pay attention to you because you're old school. But I think that I think that there's great bonus to having a cartoon in the computer realm.
Yeah, no, couldn't agree more. Actually, sorry, there are so many questions, and I'm gonna snap through them. But
Okay,
this one,
okay, we're gonna do
this
some
one.
bullet answers.
Okay, let's do some bullet answers. First question, Gloria. At what age did you start drawing cartoons, and who inspired you to first start to draw?
First influence was Dr. Seuss, who transported me into the pages of books rather than thinking I'm looking at a flat surface. I felt like I was looking into a window to another world, and I've always tried to aspire to do that. My first cartoon was when I was 6 years old. My mom has kept it of
Really?
Abraham Lincoln and the Gettysburg Address. My first ever caricature.
There you
Oh,
go.
there it
We've got
is.
it. We've got it here. Oh,
That's it.
fantastic.
Yeah,
Wait, did
that's
you
right. I
say
tell
6 years
people that I
old? That's pretty good.
Six, yeah, yeah. In fact, I tell people that I started 44 years ago at The Economist, and this was my first cartoon at The Economist. But that's not the case. I started much later and did other
Well,
cartoons.
well, actually, so that's a nice segue to Harvey's question, who wonders, are caricaturists, are they, or I guess cartoonists as well, are they born with general artistic talent, or could pretty much anyone learn the trade?
Great, a super question. And my uh, abbreviated answer is anybody can learn to draw. It's like learning a foreign language. Everybody can learn a foreign language. Some people are better at learning foreign languages than others. And just because you can learn to draw doesn't make you an artist, because being an artist is learning a foreign language and then writing poetry in that language. And so you can learn all the skills of drawing. Absolutely everybody can. I can, some people say they can't. No, I'm telling you, you can. But caricature is right in that sort of gray area, because caricature is like jazz, it's
Mm,
improvisation. There can be a great concert violinists who can't do jazz. It's just the way that they're kind of wired. And caricature is a little bit like that. But you can learn this. There are tricks to the
mm.
trade, so you can learn it up to a certain point. But that little point of magic in caricature, I think that's a little something special.
I can well imagine. Actually, on that line, on jazz, and that little something special. Paul asks, how does one draw the line between effective caricature and just being mean? How do you think about that?
Yeah, it's really a good point. And of course, it's so subjective. Every individual, their that line is in a different place, and also can matter according to your emotional relationship to the person being ridiculed in the cartoon. So one person may think this blistering cartoon of Trump is brilliant, and then you can imagine there's a whole crew of others who feel the complete opposite. So when you stick specifically to just the facial characteristics, I can, if you give us Putin, I could draw him 1,000 different ways, from really exaggerated to really closely resembling the person. And I try to basically tailor my caricature in order for make it work toward the point of the cartoon. What's the best way to be able to reinforce my opinion that I'm trying to express? And that's basically the criteria that I'm using for my cartoons in The Economist.
That sounds fair. That sounds fair. Jason wants to know, what cartoon or cartoons are you most proud of, or think had perhaps a bigger impact than others? Is there one that sort of stands out, or a genre perhaps?
Um, Well, the cartoons that I'm most proud of, to be honest, are cartoons that I do about the environment. I've done lots of cartoons. I mean, over my course of years with Economist, I did lots, and I started back in the day when it wasn't popular to do so. And it's partly because the planet, our environment, cannot talk for itself, cannot defend itself. It requires us to defend it. And the cartoons can, in their effective nature, hopefully tells a story over time. And if you keep on, reinforcing it, we
Mhm.
perhaps will make change in slow ways. But to me, those are the ones I'm most proud of, and the ones that you can be certain I'm going to keep on visiting.
Good. Good. I'm glad to hear that. Actually, there's one I've got in mind. We might send that to you in our follow up to this. But yes, I agree. And actually, Cal, if you take the environment as an example, I mean, one of the issues with that subject is that it's rarely news, right? It's one of those slow
Yeah,
burning stories. So how do you make
right.
sure it does make it into your cartoon versus whatever Trudeau or Olympics or Russia is sort of elbowing it out of the way?
Yeah, so what I'm gathering my notions for cartoons, I'm thinking in the medium term. And what I mean is, I'm not just thinking of cartoons for this week, I'm thinking about the next 4 weeks, of the past 3 weeks, because I want to make sure that um, every time the people open up The Economist and look at my cartoon, they're not sure what they're going to get. It gives them a little additional impetus to have a look. And if I'm doing cartoons always on either certain subjects, let's say uh, U.S. elections, which can get tiresome pretty fast, you want to diversify it across many different subject matter. You want to diversify the tone of voice you have in the cartoon, sometimes very funny, sometimes very serious. And into that mix would be the environmental cartoons, where you do some cartoons that are very on the news, and then some cartoons that are, at 20,000 feet, you're stepping back and approaching something. So that's the way I join them in the mix. I
Mm.
like to think of my cartoons as a collection rather than an individual.
Okay. I've just heard who the winner is of who we're going to draw, Cal, and I'm sure lots of people are keen to now, with your promise that anybody can learn to draw, or at least learn the techniques. This is where we find
Right.
out. So everyone, grab your paper, grab your pen or your pencil. Ladies and gentlemen, the winner is Putin, Vladimir Putin. Perhaps
Aha!
unsurprisingly, here he is. So I
Fantastic.
mean, yeah, you say fantastic. Do you like drawing Putin? I mean, if as we're just looking at his face coming up here now, you've obviously drawn him many times, but as you teach people, just how do you look at his face?
Yeah, so you've seen all the cartoons of mine are so detailed, and what I have done for some of the major characters, I've drawn so many times that I can distill their face down to the very simple shapes. And that's important because my father, whose face is indelibly etched in my brain, I can't draw from memory because I haven't drawn him enough. But other people like Putin, I've drawn many times. And I think I've got this broken down to a set of steps that you guys are going to like. So I want
Uh,
everyone to get their paper in front of them.
Cal,
Okay,
could
you too,
you? Sorry,
Sacha.
I'm getting my paper, but I'm getting a request whether you could use a pen for this one because it will show a little bit more
Okay,
clearly than the pencil. Sorry
that
about
is a
that.
great idea. Let me see if I can get a
So
good pen here for you.
everyone
Okay, I'm
sees
good.
it. Okay, I've got my pen, right, or
Okay,
pencil.
so I want everybody in the middle of their page to just do a little dot and a little dot in the middle of their page. Okay, and then from the dot, imagine the space between your knuckle and your thumb to the tip of your thumb. Do that a line going east to west on one side and the same on the other side. So those two lines equal to about the space between your knuckle and your thumb, the tip of your thumb. Okay, so that's just a solid line. Then we're going to put a dot at the end of each one of those, and I want you to draw that same line going straight up, about the same size. Now, so you're looking to try to build a square, but it doesn't have to be exact. It doesn't have to be exact. Just just pretty simple. And then at the top, we're going to do the same thing across, all the way across. All right. So we're going to start basically with a square. Then I want you to go over to this side. And I want you to draw a line straight out. That's maybe a little shorter than halfway of this thing. But if it goes a little longer, it's not the end of the world. Now, remember, we're in the middle of the Winter Olympics, so I'm going to ask you guys to draw a ski jump. Okay, so a ski jump, all right, it's going to be one of these that goes up like this. All right, so you're going to be hopping on the ski here. You're going to go down, and you're going to do a giant ski jump down the left-hand side there. And then I want you to kind of connect the ends of it like this. All right. Now, underneath this, in this little gap area that you created here, I want you to draw. This is going to be his bottom lip and a little chin, just like that if you can. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, let's go back to the top. Now we're going to extend this line here. We're going to extend this line here. Okay, and we're going to do a giant frown, half an egg, whatever you want to call it. That's going to go there like that. When you get to the bottom here, I'm going to ask you to do an ear that looks like it came from Star Trek, from Spock from Star Trek, just to stick that there. Okay. And then this bit here is going to be where his eyes are. We're going to do a little triangle and we're going to darken that in. Okay. Now remember, he's got a brow that's so heavy that often you can't see his eyes from a distance. We're going to go over here for his hair. We're just going to drop a straight line down like this. And then he's got a little flourish of hair here, just a few dots right like this. Okay. I'm going to go back to this dot. Remember we had that dot here earlier in the middle of the bottom line? I'm going to ask you to connect that to the bottom of the ear, just like that. Okay, like to the bottom of the ear. And you're already beginning to see the kind of the shapes, the silhouette of a profile of Putin there. Okay, but now we're going to get down to the interesting bit. To me, this is the body of the character. First, I'm just going to ask you to do a little triangle like this. This is going to be kind of his neck, his really squat neck. And then I'm going to ask you to draw a baked potato. You're going to draw a baked potato, all right, just down like this. Just draw a baked potato like this. Oh, I forgot to add that, but just a big baked potato there. Underneath that baked potato, I want you to draw a trapezoid. So this is going to go like this. Okay, that's straight across like this. Now it looks like he's wearing a dress, but hang with me, guys. Hang with me. Okay, so underneath the dress, we're going to do the Olympic symbol. Okay, I'll show you guys how. I know it's tough. We're going to draw a circle here, and a circle in the middle, and then we draw a circle. Now, if they're not perfect, don't worry. That's absolutely fine. Once you finish that, we're going to make the Olympic symbol. We're going to draw another circle here, another circle here. So very timely sort of thing. Now you got your circles. Let's connect them. Underneath like this. Let's connect them like this. Then we connect them like this. And now we're going to draw a straight line here and give him his cannon, right? So this is Vladimir Putin, rootin' tootin' Putin, doing his thing. And I think you guys need to sign your cartoon now. I think you need to sign it. And I think we got Vladimir Putin.
Oh, that is fantastic, Kal. Thank you very much indeed for that. Since I'm going to ask you to do a quick Boris as well, because Boris was a runner-up with so many votes. But just
yes,
I wonder, do leaders' faces become easier or harder to draw as they age? I mean, Putin is now in his 70s. I remember when we talked about Biden last time we chatted, you were still trying to figure out his face. But where does age come into how easy or hard it is for you to draw people?
Well, age certainly, as you can see in my face, creates the shapes become more distinct within someone. Bits sag, lines appear. But the most important thing of any recognition of any individual is the silhouette that their face creates. It's a shape to the head that you can recognize at a distance. And so I always try to get the general shape of the head first, nicely, and then I go in and work on the individual shapes inside. But those shapes get more focused as they get older.
Well,
so you want Boris Johnson.
I don't know what you're talking about with your face, Kal. You look fresh as a daisy. But let's do Boris very quickly if we can.
Okay, really quickly. All right. So we got Boris Johnson. He's got this big mop of hair, and people think that if you just take his mop of hair and put it on a pear or something like that, it would kind of look like Boris Johnson. But to me, it's not just the hair that give him character. He's got a rather large nose beaten on from under, and then slanty eyes, which are kind of half hidden underneath that mop of hair. And then he's got kind of a soft upper lip, right, like this, and then again a sort of a soft lower lip, a little pudgy here, a little chin. It's kind of these. Speaking about lines, the line at the end of his mouth here, and then this line here gets more acute. His cheek is sinking, getting more and more sunken down here, right? But this is the bit that I think is interesting, is that when you see somebody, you never see their face by themselves. They're always in the context of their body. And he's looking more and more kind of hunched over and rather unhealthy looking. And, maybe, there was an important bit that I forgot, the party hat. Yeah, we got to put the party hat on him too. Okay. And then a little elastic that comes down underneath his chin. So what do you think? Is that Boris Johnson? What do you think?
That is definitely Boris Johnson. I love the little addition of the hat. That is rather fantastic. How do you, I mean, with something like that, I mean, I would like to think that most of our readers by now have realized that what a mess he is in because of the Christmas parties. But even if you don't, it's a bit the same as the beef with Canada. Even if you don't get the hat reference, this is still, I mean, how much do you care whether everyone will get every reference in a cartoon, or is it purposely sort of multi-layered?
I like the multi-layered element of it, but I have to also tell you, Sasha, is that I learned so much when I was a teenager in my early 20s about public policy, about current events through cartoons. And often cartoons that I didn't get, but I knew there was a story there. I knew something was being said, and then it piqued my interest to go learn
Mm,
about it.
yeah.
Or it gave me the main characters and the main issues that are going on. And so I really believe that one of the great cartoons' responsibilities and roles is as learning tools, teaching tools rather, and so that people can, gather a lot of information and provokes them to look into these issues more.
For sure, for sure. It shouldn't just be easy. It shouldn't just be always be completely explicit, right?
Well, sometimes it can be. I try not to have them too explicit, but that particularly for the e-commerce audience, the most sophisticated audience in the world, by the way, and that I really like to make it engaging for them. I mean, I try to do cartoons that I would like to look at,
Yeah.
and I have a wide variety of tastes, so I try to match those various different tastes.
Well, mind stretching is the term that Zani, our editor in chief, would use for that kind of work, right? So I'm just going to throw in one or two very last reader questions, as well as, by the way, tell you the nominated cat name, which lots of people have taken part in. But this is a good one. Fergus wonders whether there are any ethical concerns about characterization of physical features in your. He said, this is quoting him, in your wonderful cartoons, KAL, Fergus has been a subscriber for 30 years. But yeah, do ethics, or I guess just general sensitivities come into it when you're thinking about, I don't know, drawing a man or a woman or someone of color versus a white person? How do you navigate that?
Those are really important questions and important considerations. And I do take them very seriously when I'm doing cartoons because, as you can see it, because I've practiced at art, I can really do just about anything. And so if I really want to make someone look really bad or do a really abusive imagery, I can do it. But I don't. And I try not
Mm,
to inadvertently offend people. And when you're dealing with, racial stereotypes. I guess I'm
mm,
trying to do the delicate dance between a caricature and a stereotype.
mm.
And so, yeah, it's something you have to consider, and I hope I succeed most of the time.
I I really do think you do. There's another question. People are asking about what we can see behind you, and Ron would
Oh.
be interested in understanding which cartoons you've actually put up in your office and why. Like, who's made the Wall of Fame, and why are they up there?
Yeah, so the top two cartoons on the wall there are my one on the left is my first cartoon that appeared in The Economist back in 1978. The cartoon on the right is the first cover that I did for The Economist back in the early 80s, I believe. Um, the next two cartoons down are caricatures done of me by cartoonists around the world. And when we get together, we draw each other a lot. And I have a particularly good face for caricature, and I love my face being abused in that sort of way. I'm a glutton for punishment. And so, yes, I've drawn other people, and they've drawn me, and I think that's just absolutely lovely.
Hmm. Um, uh, okay, sorry, too many questions, folks. I'm very sorry. I'm gonna pick two more, but I'll make sure I pass them all on to. Sorry, I'll do a third one. Anon wants to know where you got your shirt, because Anon loves your shirts, and I agree with Anon.
Oh, great. Well, it's a French company called Coton Du, COTONDOUX, and you can see them online. They're fantastic. They got a great variety of shirts. I love them.
Okay, sorry, I said two last questions, and here they are. I'm going to end on that one. Yeah, I mean, quite a few people in different ways are asking this question about, is there a line you wouldn't cross, which kind of opens this broader conversation right around, should there be limits to what we can make jokes about, even though your cartoons are not necessarily about making jokes. But are there any subjects that you think are off limits for an editorial cartoon, or is it just all about how you treat them?
I think it's mostly about how you treat them. But there are certain subjects that I don't think are either worthy for a cartoon or even worthy for The Economist. That is, I don't do cartoons about the children or family of politicians. Um, and I also tend to stay away from royal things only if it's involved, some sort of political ramifications rather than just the kind of the rumor mongering or something that you would see in the tabloids. I avoid kind of tabloid approach to things. But I also think that the cartoons require. I have a huge amount of freedom doing my cartoons. The economists give me a lot of freedom elsewhere I work, but with all freedoms comes responsibility, and I want to make sure that I'm doing cartoons that are effective pieces of journalism. And to do that, if you cross the line on any cartoons, they create such a ruckus or you create such bad feeling to what you do, then you no longer are an effective cartoonist. And so in order to maintain your capabilities and also to basically make each piece you do the best job that they can. The cartoon, you give them life, you send them out, and you hope that they do the best job they can. You have to make sure that they're effective, and that's my main criteria.
Thanks for watching. If you'd like to find out more about our upcoming subscriber events, please click the link. There you can also find recordings of previous events, including a great session with KAL.